This is Module 1, Lesson 9. In this lesson, we'll be using place value to round multi-digit numbers to any place value. Let's start with 4,333. And we're going to round to the thousands place. So we think that on the low end of our number line that we're visualizing would be 4,000. One more thousand would be 5,000. And if we think of the midpoint between 4,000 and 5,000, it would be 4,500. The number we're looking at is less than 4,500, which tells us we would round to 4,000. So when we write that, instead of writing an equal sign, our equal sign lines become wavy, and that means that it's about this much or it's approximately this much. It's an estimate. So we'd read that as 4,333 is about 4,000. Let's try a 5-digit number. And this one we're going to round also to the nearest thousand. So again, visualizing our number line, on the low end we have 18,000. One more thousand would be 19,000. Midpoint between 18,000 and 19,000 would be 18,500. And the number we have here is greater than the midpoint, so we're going to round up to 19,000, and we would write it as 18,753 is about 19,000. Now we're going to look at another 5-digit number, but this time we're going to round to the 10,000s place. So here we have 6 10,000s, so that would be 60,000, and we could round up. The next highest would be 70,000, and we think of our midpoint between 60,000 and 70,000 as being 65,000. 65,600 is a little above that midpoint, so we would round to 70,000, and we would say 65,600 is about 70,000. Now let's look at a 6-digit number, and this time we're going to round to the 100,000s. So again, on the low end of our visual number line, we're going to think of 600,000, and one more 100,000 would be 700,000, and our midpoint would be 650,000, and 676,000 is more than that midpoint, so we're going to round up. So 676,000 is about 700,000. Okay, let's look at another number. This time we're going to round to different place values in the same number. So we're going to start rounding to 100,000. So if we round to the 100,000s, it can either be 100,000 or one higher, which would be 200,000. The midpoint of 150,000, this number here is less than 150,000, so we would leave it at 100,000. Now let's round to the 10,000s place. Same number, but we're rounding to a different place value. So now we have 4 10,000s, and higher on the scale we'd have 5 10,000s. So we either have 140,000 or 150,000. Since we're rounding to the 10,000s, the 100,000 stays the same, and we're either going to have 140,000 or 150,000. 145,000 would be the midpoint. 147,000 is more than that, so we're going to round up to 150,000. Now we're going to round to the thousands place. Again, same number, but we're rounding to the thousands place. So the 100,000 stays the same, the 10,000 stays the same, and now we're going to round to the thousands place. So I have 7,000. It can stay at 7,000, or it can round to 8,000, which is one more. 7,500 would be my midpoint. 591 is greater than 500, so I'm going to round up to 8,000. So now my number is 148,000. Now I'm going to round to the hundreds place. So my 100,000 stays the same, my 10,000 stays the same, my thousands stay the same, and I'm looking at the hundreds. So it could stay at 500, or it can round up to 600. 591 is much closer to 600 than it is to 500, so I'm going to go up to 600. And then finally, I can round to the tens place. So my 100,000s, my 10,000s, my thousands, and my hundreds stays the same. I'm looking at 9 tens, and I can either have 9 tens or 10 tens, but 91 is much closer to 90 than it is to 100, so I'll stay with 9 tens. So these are all estimates of the same number. It's just that they change depending on what the place value is I'm rounding to. But if my idea in getting estimates is to make mental math easy, these numbers down here are going to be pretty hard to do mental math with. These two are definitely the easier numbers to do mental math with. So you can make your choice about which one you want to round to based on the ease of mental math and how accurate you want your estimate to be. Obviously, this estimate is way closer to the real number, but again, it doesn't give us much value if we want to use it to check for a calculation we've done and we want to be able to do it mentally. All right, we're going to go to some problem set problems now. So the first one says round to the nearest thousand. So our first number is 5,300, and we have 5 in the thousands place. So I'm either going to round to 5,000 at the low end or 6,000 at the higher end. 5,500 would be my midpoint. This number is less than that, so I'm going to round to 5,000. If you need to draw a vertical number line to help you visualize this, that's fine. But if you can do it by visualizing the number line instead of drawing it, that's fine also. Pause the video and try 1B. Okay, for 1B, again, we're rounding to the thousands place. So this is either going to be 4,000 or 5,000. 4,500 would be the midpoint. Our number here is higher than 4,500, so we're going to round to 5,000. Pause the video and try 1C. We're still rounding to the thousands place, so the 10,000s place is going to stay the same, and we're either going to round to leave it at 2,000 or round up to 3,000. When I look at the rest of my number, and I think of my midpoint, which would be 2,500, this would be closer to 2,000. So I'm going to round to 2,000. And my number becomes 42,000. Pause the video and try D. Again, we're still rounding to the thousands place. So my 100,000 stays the same. My 10,000 stays the same. So this would either be 1,000 or 2,000. The midpoint would be 1,500. This is a little more than that, so I'm going to round up to 2,000. And my estimate is going to be 802,000. And explain how you found your answer for part D. Pause the video and do that. But you can use words, pictures, numbers. I'm just going to draw a number line. So I'm going to, at my low end, it's going to be 801,000. And at the high end, it's going to be 802,000. And I'm going to see that my midpoint would be 801,500, and so this would be a little more than my midpoint, so I'm going to round up to 802,000. Okay, moving on. This time we're rounding to the nearest 10,000. So pause the video and try 2A. Okay, we're rounding to the nearest 10,000, so it's either going to be 20,000 or round up to 30,000. 26,000 is more than the midpoint of 25,000, so I'm going to round up to 30,000. Pause the video and try 2B. So again, I'm rounding to the 10,000s, so it's either going to be 3 10,000s or 4 10,000s. The midpoint would be 35,000. This is less than 35,000, so I'm going to stay at 30,000. Pause the video and try 2C. Okay, again, we're still rounding to the 10,000s, so I have 8 10,000s. So it can either stay 8 10,000s or 9 10,000s. When I look at the rest of the numbers here, I see I'm going to be above the midpoint, so I'm going to round up to 790,000. Pause the video and try D. Okay, again, I'm rounding to the 10,000, so it's either going to stay at 0 or it's going to round up to 1 10,000. The midpoint of 7,500, 705,000, this is going to round up. The midpoint is above the midpoint, so I'm going to round up to 1 more 10,000, so it'd be 710,000. And E says, explain why two problems have the same answer. Write another number that has the same answer when rounded to the nearest 10,000. So again, here to explain this, you could use number lines and explain it, or you could say that 26,000 rounds to a higher place value. It rounds up to 3 10,000s, whereas B, because it's less than the midpoint, stays at 30,000. So these two have the same answers because one rounds to the higher 10,000 and one rounds to the lower 10,000. And then there's a lot of numbers you could possibly write there that would round to the nearest 10,000. So as long as you have a situation like you do here where one is rounding up and one is rounding down, then that answer would be correct. Okay, moving on to number 3. Now we're rounding to the nearest 100,000. So try 3A. So for 3A, we have 8 10,000s. The next higher would be 9 10,000s. 840,000 is less than 850,000, which is the midpoint. So we'd round down to 800,000. Pause the video and try B. For B, again, we could have 8,000 or go up to 9,000. 850,000 would be the midpoint. This is a little bit larger than that, so it's above the midpoint, so we'd round up to 900,000. Pause the video and try C. Okay, so for this one, we can stay at 700,000 or round up to 800,000. The midpoint would be 750,000. This number is larger than the midpoint, so we're going to round up to 800,000. Okay, and finally, pause the video and try D. Okay, for D, we have 900,000. The next highest would be 100,000, which would be a million. The midpoint this number would be above the midpoint because 91,965 would be closer to million. So we would round up to 1 million. And for E, we have two problems, A and C, with the same answer. So pause the video for a minute and explain why they have the same answer. Okay, again, either in words or in pictures, it's the same situation we had in 2, where 840,000 rounds down to the lower possibility of 800,000, and 761,000 rounds up to the next higher one, which is 800,000. So one is staying at the lower, one is going to the higher possibility, so the answers end up being the same. Okay. Going on to number 4, we're going to use what we've learned to solve some real-world problems. So for 4A, it tells us to solve the problems using pictures, numbers, or words. So you have to explain what your thinking is and show your thinking, and remember to answer the question with a sentence. It's ask in a sentence, it's ask in words, so answer in words. So it says the 2012 Super Bowl had an attendance of just 68,658 people. If the headline in the newspaper the next day said about 70,000 people attended the Super Bowl, how did the newspaper round to estimate the total number of people in attendance? So pause the video and try that one. Okay, I'm going to draw a number line to show this. And I see that the value that changed here was the 10,000s. And then this is a number that it could have rounded to if I rounded my original number to 10,000s. So I think the newspaper rounded to 10,000s. And I'm going to see if I can show that. So given the number 68,658, if I stayed with the 600,000, the next highest one would be 70,000. My midpoint would be 65,000, and I see this number would come in here. So I can see that they rounded to the next highest 10,000, and that would be an accurate estimate. So how did the newspaper round to estimate the total number of people in attendance? So they rounded to 10,000s. That's the place value they rounded to. Okay, so for B, the 2011 Super Bowl had an attendance of 103,219 people. If the headline in the newspaper the next day read about 200,000 people attend Super Bowl, is the newspaper estimate reasonable? Use rounding to explain your answer. So pause the video and try that one. So again, I think the easiest way to show this is with a number line. So looking at the original number and the number they rounded to, looks to me like they rounded to the 100,000s place, since they rounded to 200,000. So the other possibility would be 100,000. The midpoint would be 150,000. And the actual number was 103,219, which would come here. So the estimate isn't reasonable, because if they were rounding to the 100,000s, the correct estimate would be 100,000. So my answer is no. The estimate isn't reasonable. Rounding to 100,000. Would be about 100,000 people. Okay? Then finally for C, it says, according to the problems above, about how many more people attended the Super Bowl in 2011 than in 2012? Round each number to the largest place value before giving the estimated answer. Okay, so pause the video and try that one. Okay, so in 2011, the number of people was 103,219. And in 2012, it was 68,658. It tells us to round to the largest place value. So for the 2011 number, the largest place value is 100,000. And if I round that, that would round to 100,000, since it's closer to 100,000 than 200,000. Now for the 2012 number, my largest place value is 10,000. So I would either have it 60,000 or I round up to 70,000. 68,658 is closer to 70,000 than to 60,000. So I'd round to 770,000, and to get the difference would be 30,000. So to answer my question, about 30,000 more people attended in 2011. Because again, word problem question requires a word answer. And that's the end of lesson 9.